Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. And this is Jupiter hour. It actually is already Luna night. The moon is 22 in Aries, which is why I don't take out my Jupiter talisman. For those of you who have Jupiter in Cancer, happy Jupiter return. This episode, Jupiter is in the 5th house of lovers. So I'm going to do a very personal episode. And this episode might be triggering the things that you didn't know that are a trigger. And it's particularly triggering for the people who grew up on the notion that those who are easily offended or triggered should be triggered and offended more often. Don't ask me how I know. I know, okay? So this is a personal episode where I'm going to discuss certain things that I have gone through processing or gone through my journey with my own sexuality and what that might be triggering in others. While this episode might be not only taboo, especially to the people that think that they have talked about everything and nothing will surprise them, and particularly to those people, and it's also going to be illuminating and hopefully resolving some inner challenges that people have with me in general. Okay. First of all, when I remember my younger self, I'm not going to go into childhood, but definitely the topic of being sexually sovereign and having sexuality an issue, something that, not an issue, something that I enjoy and not depend on or coming into a place where that could affect, I don't know, my decision in life or the type of people that I'm with was an issue. I didn't understand where did it stem from, but even through my teenagehood, I understood many things that nobody told me. First of all, that I want to be in a situation when I am ready to be sexual with person. And secondly, that I want to be sexually sovereign. I did not have it in so many words, but I wanted to be in a situation and a place where my sexuality is a place where I can connect and I can be sovereign at the same time. I guess I was thinking about relationships in terms of good sex, which is something that does not cover the non-sexual parts that are very important to development of healthy sexuality. And in fact, I'm very grateful for the people that made me aware of these parts in my life, because I was simply seeking to resolve of how to be in a situation where my sexuality is good. And I had a lot of eurekas that startled people simply because not only nobody told me, but also no other therapist or even sex life coach would touch on that, even for many years later. And so when I went through encounters with people, it seemed to be that the people around me had a lot of thoughts about love and relationships that absolutely were not anywhere near mine, and around sexuality that absolutely were not anywhere near mine. I was asking questions like a curious child, and people did not know to answer that. So let's say if I would speak to a man and I would ask him, how does a man know that he's in love? Okay, they would just go, and when they would tell me all kinds of things about love, and I'm like, okay, but what about sexuality? What about attraction? What about desire? Um, and then when I would have people that would address that, then all kinds of relationship advices as I grew older, of never, always keep something to yourself, not be mysterious, never completely, I don't know, give yourself to another. Then my very innocent Scorpio stellium question was, what about cervical orgasm, which sparked an explosion where even the other person, older than me and in a marriage, said, well, you triggered something in me, I see, because they ran into this question from expectation that a woman will have, or a man with a vagina will have, a cervical orgasm, and they did not expect it from the point of view of the innate inner desire to connect innerly and orgasm wholly and fully, and deepen the connection. And even a psychologist was feeling a little bit weird around me because I was just so entrenched in sex positive sexuality that even when he called his penis an organ, it sparked a reaction in me. And I was like, that's strange, because in sex positive we actually were taught to address our genitalia or sexual organs more directly. And that was when I came to curate from sexual boundary violation and childhood stuff. So that is so this is where I felt both like a sexual alien, and a person that definitely had an intuition that I didn't know to quite explain. And then I also began to notice, being so attuned and scorpionic, that there were situations where the sexual fantasy I had to discern, is it my sexual fantasy? Is it another? Do I want to participate in that other or not? I would learn about mind control, using trauma, sexual trauma, to do mind control, implanting urges in people, trying to program people to have an orgasm around something that is violent towards them or abusive towards them, and using the natural tendency of the body to lubricate itself, both when there is like labor, but also in times of rape, because it's a coping mechanism, and then people can feel a lot of shame about the fact that they orgasm during rape. No, it didn't mean that you want that, it just means that that was a coping mechanism to reduce pain. So those scientific eurekas would come only later in that trajectory, where the innate understandings were already intuitively there. So particularly to what I last touched, it would be, I think I first heard it from both Annika Lucas and Hans Smedema, who was really satirical because he was pointing at exactly why his wife couldn't have sex with him, but he also believed that his wife denied him sex. Yet he did so much for his wife that he smuggled her away from trafficking and himself away from trafficking. And he said that they would program the ladies, but it's also they did that to the men. And that might be very important for people out there. They would program the ladies to orgasm from scenarios that are more and more violent. And this causes people, and because those ladies never have the chance to have relaxed arousal, which is how we orgasm when we are attuned with ourselves, then they only knew rape or inability to have an orgasm. And the men as well. And so men would have this trajectory and view not only of the world, but also of relationships, or other women of relationships, like, hey, these women only want a man that treats them not well. No, such a woman is trafficked and mind controlled, and basically your encounter is such that they would get psychic information through you, not her. She's not the succubus, but actually the handler is the incubus or succubus through her, and then they would get the psychic information that is also reading the energy, which would use to your political assassination or to your assassination later on. And so that affected the entire dating culture in a certain way, and the fact that I began to tend to build in relaxed arousal means that I grew out of sexualities where it was not based on that, whether astrally or not, and that was a part of what I considered loving myself, because I defined good sex as something I feel good before, during, and after. So I didn't go with, oh, this is rape. I went with, what is good sex to me? What is missing in that? And even when I went through something that could very well be considered astral rape, my conversation with the person was the conversation you would have after having sex with a partner, where some things just didn't work for you. So you'd say, oh, I like that, and I like that, and I like that. This is something that is missing for me. And then they went completely weird around me, and because they understood that they raped, basically, but they were not even ready to understand that. And also that exposed the brotherhood traditions and rituals that they have undergone. So this is something, anyway, sexual sovereignty, relaxed arousal, actually having an orgasm that is not a coping mechanism, but actual sex, okay, is something that's triggering to most of humanity, men, women, LGBTQ, everyone, because our entire society is founded and funded on people not being able to do so. And when I say people, I mean everyone, whether it's royal families and monarchies and upper echelons and elite, to common people, to tribes, to different cultures, to military positions, to everybody, okay? And so this is where anybody that talks about relaxed arousal, sexuality, and so on and so forth is immediately triggering, because people are confronted with a place that maybe they thought. Actually, one of the conversations that I had with a psychologist that later also threatened my life, but at the same time we're sitting in the room, and that was actually an upper point. He was like, I'm wondering which of us actually has more sexual experience when we begin to include the astral realm. And so that was an authenticity moment, because it sparks a completely different thinking that most of society has. And so it's one thing to discover that, let's say, you're having a conversation with some other guy in some Eckveld, and that other guy used to be in a lot of relationships and used to having a lot of sex, but he may not ever had sex where both partners are actually informed, willing, consent, that feels good before, during, and after. Or maybe he doesn't know to discern still of when it's like that and when it's not ahead of time, and so do their partners, okay? It's completely another thing to having a trained health personnel might be discovering that they never actually had an orgasm. And that person might be married with kids, okay? So I have been a figure that wouldn't fit into many boxes, because while I couldn't be put into the whore box because I was trying to overcome and rehabilitate the ability to have sex that is actually sexy, I could also not be put into what other boxes that people had in their mind, and that triggered an entire societal collapse everywhere I go, whether it's a workplace where just the fact that I even aim at sovereign sexuality means I notice things that other people don't regarding the labor structure, regarding the way the philosophies and beliefs affect the sexual energy, regarding magic, astrological magic traditions and rites. Okay? It's everywhere. Sales models, I talked about in a previous episode. I sold sex positive tips for self-pleasure and overcoming religious trauma, and even the model of the marketing, we were supposed to get the person to buy our products as a form of saying yes to themselves, and I'm like, no, that's not willing consent. There is our product and there is their sense of self, and those are not mutually exclusive, and they're not necessarily bond with one another. And it's important for their sexual health to have that discernment so that they can willingly, consensually buy this course. And so I had to think about the business model and pricing model, and then given that the business owners had a problem with asking for more money, or build a business model that would be, some fully subsidized, some fully priced, and the fully priced will be way more expensive to accommodate for sovereign women being able to afford rent or buy or mortgage or growing their own businesses by working in that business. So this is where the fact that I was doing that inner work or whatnot completely collapsed every single structure around me that does not align with sexual sovereignty. So from that trajectory, I spark up obsessions in people, I spark up rage in people, I spark up discomfort in people, I spark up the everythingness, even by my very being, because a part of what we learn when we do sexual sovereignty and relaxed arousal is simply to be. And the fact that I am basically sparks an entire earth around me completely collapsing into itself, because I just am and everybody around has a tower moment. Very challenging, because people like myself expose that most of society is built upon structures where to be is not to be. So, and people can't also put me in the man-hating radical feminist, because I'm absolutely not that person. Nor can they, it's simply I don't fit into any of these boxes that society has created around anything that expresses sexuality or chooses not to. So this is where the fact that I spark up these reactions is not something I can do anything about other than being myself, which sparks off even more reactions. And I'm also not in charge of anybody else's process and triggers around their sensuality. Now, given the fact that I'm in my I'm in my 40s, which means I'm going to have the Uranus opposition, Rahu maturation, and basically I become an even more person. Life begins at 40. They say that for a reason. And given the fact that my life trajectory is I have been encountering people from all walks of life, it means that all those people from all those walks of life are met with those reactions within themselves. Of course, it's also a growth process within me. I can look at a chart of a pedo ring leader and say, well, I can clearly see that he didn't have sexual sovereignty at home, and then he never had a way out from violence, and then he became a landowner or a homeowner or a home a possession holder that has to hold houses where sexual sovereignty does not exist, or islands for that record. And the depth of looking into those things, it sparks up something, especially when I don't stand even in the boxes of, oh, I'm a sexual assault survivor, or I'm a ritual abuse survivor, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. I'm like, I'm an astrologer, I'm a writer, I'm a creatress, I'm a scientist, I'm a researcher. Oh, this is also some of the things that I just tended to. It's like, yeah, there was this transit I had, so I tended to political assassination prevention. And then. And so that also takes me out of the boxes that people have for survivors, victims, or even researchers of a certain topic, which furthermore instigate the vulnerable position where I paint the picture of, hey, this is the implications that I see to these topics on life. Because I'm making those connections. And also learning to what it's both about making the connections and dissolving certain connections. Okay, what people think that one thing is related to another is not necessarily so. For example, LGBTQ is not a psychiatric disease. The fact that people need to rape one another as men in brotherhoods and have a supposedly heterosexual, heteronormative, traditional family values marriage outside means they have to pretend both inside the cult, because most of the sex is rituals, ritual rape, okay, and and outside the cult, and even to get to, are they even gay or are they even straight, is not facilitated. And then inside the cult, they must be participating in gay ritual rape, not just gay, but also gay, to be owners of real estate. But outside the cult, if they're LGBTQ, they cannot have access to real estate because they are out with their visibility or their sexual preferences. That being said, I did have a Facebook friend that was a channeler, that is a channeler and healer, and he's gay, and they're living in an apartment that is owned by an Orthodox Jew, and when they need to fix something, then an Arab employee comes to comes to fix that. So there are people who live in these bubbles. Of course, they live in Tel Aviv. And then the rest of the world, okay? Most people can't afford living in Tel Aviv. Yeah. So now that I have addressed those things, and not only that, I am astral world informed, which means that when people had astral experiences, well, let's say they were not able to be physical with someone, but they were being in an astral relation to someone, which can be with a lot of blending into one another. For example, let's say your partner, you feel your partner, you become your partner astrally, you might begin, let's say you're a straight person, you might begin to look at women and feel either arousal or emotions because you simply are being one with the other. And that can create a lot of magic, but also a lot of challenges of the boundaries between the self and the other. Okay? Astrologically speaking, 7th house Pisces, ascendant Pisces is very prone to that. Even Aries, because Aries is the sense of self, so ruler of the 7th, Aries 7th can mean that the self and the other are kind of like almost one. So, yeah, and that created another world of worlds because I understood in topics that other people did not even have access to, or that they weren't informed or aware, or that there were experiences but didn't know how to name that. And that collided with a lot of models take a look at the communication between you and another as if there was a camera and only able to observe things. What would the camera see? Okay, so this is for when people tend to project things onto the communication. Absolutely nullified when it comes to psychic and astral connections. And it doesn't mean that the astral information is completely in clarity. Okay, so communication is any type of communication that has its challenges as well. People can impersonate another person's astral energy, and there are even uploads to computers of people's psyche which can be activated. So this is, and the fact that I tend to that from the technology perspective, the research perspective, the sex positive perspective, the astrology perspective, and the experiential perspective is quite startling to people who just look to write somebody off as cuckoo and be done with that. Even the physical perspective, like this is why I say MK Ultra projects which work on this type of trauma causing mind control, blah 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 blah. It's a wealth block, and when we have, fundraising for military alliance, we see that keeps on expressing itself in various ways, and kind of like until we address that. But there is a challenge with the brotherhoods that if they address that, it's considered treason, and they have a scar on their throat, and it's very sexy because you understand that they address that. but on beyond that, what do we actually do to get that done with, so that we change society in a way that is actually livable? So yeah, it's a very personal vlog. It's something that I address following a lot of things that I got, a lot of comments, a lot of reactions, a lot of things where I'm like, okay, let me just address that, and people can understand, even if they have a certain reaction to me that they don't even know how to explain, and it's a mixture of this and that and that and that. Sometimes it's not that I'm, a super alien, sex bomb or something like that. It's very complimenting, but but then sometimes it's simply because I address those things, and not only that, I'm an astrologer, which sparks a reaction because Uranus also rules Kundalini rise and sexual energy. You usually don't have a family where they say, oh, my son will be an astrologer when he grow up. They need a stand-up profession. Actually, one of my teachers and great inspirations was addressing that in a conference, And he said, when people ask me if I'm what do I do for a living, I say I'm a cosmologer. Cosmology, like cosmologist, whatever you call that. But he did not say astrologer. And, it comes off as this very Aquarian ascendant, so everybody believes him. and that seals the deal. But he just became a world-renowned astrologer, so it's more difficult. It's getting more difficult to hide the fact that he's not doing just cosmology. Um, oh, that's Chris Brennan. So, and they ask why are astrologers so sexy, because usually it's about being attuned to our life energy to at least some degree, and being rebellious enough to act on it, so much so that this is how we make a living. And that's usually not only very sexy, but also very triggering. So not only that I am such a sexual alien, I am also an astrologer. So, and naturally, the way that I do astrology is going to be unique, because that's a facet of Uranus. And the more that they try to tame how astrology is done, is the more that has a reaction. By the way, science in general, that's what scientific revolutions are about. They try to define science, and then we have a science that completely defies that definition. So the very thought about the democration question of science, of what is scientific, is basically innately the next scientific revolution. Yes, and as you can see, I'm also not that person that can be put in a box of, lady, go to the kitchen, and the most I'll make is an astrological solve that might explode everything up. Yes, and inspired by a colleague. So, so that would be particularly Caitlin Koppak, that solved the question for me of how to integrate my aromatherapy certification with doing something that integrates the use of essential oils and herbs, regardless of if somebody is completely sick to the point that nothing helped. But then there are the other challenges. Astrological magic is incredibly innately growing science that is very intricate, and naturally I said that I would never do that, and the person that I have been cohabiting while not being a romantic partner said, if you do magic, astrological magic, I will not be able to be in your vicinity. And I said, well, that's not a problem, it's too intricate, too complicated, I will never do that. Immediately afterwards I was getting a calling to do Algol talisman, which is the most challenging talisman to do. Not rocket science. Algol has to be in a good position, not in an eclipse, not Algol minima, and the rest of the conditions that are good with astrological magic. If you've done an Algol talisman, you can basically do any talisman. So that was also in the time of the approaching bisextile, and I needed to work with Algol because I was heading to one giant megalithic set of transits in my life that needed Algol. Okay, so that was the usual rules of conduct do not apply when it came to my case. So Algol, by the way, has a lot to do with sexual sovereignty. For those who didn't get that. So I hope that following hearing this video, people have a little more understanding of the person behind the voice, and again, it's very likely to stir up some more reactions from people, and that's just life. I cannot make myself or what I do more simple for people. And I think that addressing things as they are, again, might create even more confusion in some, and might spark some clarity where the previous standard or the previous normal was complete and utter confusion, attempt to put me into boxes, attempt for me to participate in rituals that are absolutely not compatible with my nature or my life trajectory, um, or and that's the situation. If people tell me, well, this is what the elite does, and I'm like, well, that's gonna have to change. And lo and behold, we are in changing times, where the same times that the Rothschild abandoned the mansion, the same times where the French monarchy exiled itself to not be beheaded, the same times of the American Revolution, the Labor Revolution, the suffragist movement that would come later, um, uh, sexual revolutions and whatnot. So I'm in tune with the spirit of the times. Um, and if you have a complaint, file it to um, the stars, I guess. So I think a lot of people around me learned that when they run into an issue with me, it's usually predicting the future. And so, as much as they're angry with me, a lot of them find themselves that they can't let go. Um, Again, not because I'm this, super sexy persona. It's very complimenting to think about it that in that fashion, but simply because the issue that they have with me is predicting what the future. Or if I say something, they understand that they might not like it, but it is a predicament of something that will be. Okay, I have Moon squaring Aries. Aries is about social, big, gigantic, megalithic social changes, and the elite society, and LGBTQ society. And the Moon is in a manifesting aspect. Yes, we have that in social reformers, and we have that in Einstein chart, and we have that in many charts, where even the person find it difficult to accept what they discovered. For example, when I discovered that entire world has never had an orgasm before, and most of people come from various degrees of between rape to people pleasing, it was something that I found difficult to believe, but it's actually true. um, and yes, and then my discoveries, of course, both my astrological discoveries, and the things I just find out along the way, would trigger things in people, where they would have to rethink their entire existence, or that the way that they've been doing things. And I just live in such an existence where every once in a while that completely transforms me, and I just live in that existence, um, while other people that are less used to that, might be more triggered. So this is where it stems from. This is where it comes from, and this is also where is my trajectory. So those attempts to kind of like program me, or to um, you know get me to places that are not in alignment with relaxed arousal and sexual sovereignty, usually end up with people being feeling completely disempowered, frustrated, obsessed, and that's like, well, they never run into a person like that before. And I'm like, well, congratulations, first of all. And secondly, those practices are basically based on something that plays to extortion calls and political assassination. So congratulations for running into something that could save your life, although it's very uncomfortable to address that, and yes, or what you consider sometimes when a person fails at doing something that is harmful to them, they can feel, both a failure and guilty and shamed, and what they thought would be a winner They don't know how to frame that, and and that supposedly loss is actually a win, because to win at doing something harmful to yourself and other, is not really enjoying that win, to be very elegant with the words, particularly those that grew up on the people that having the desire for connection, sexual sovereignty, and autonomy, and basing their decision on that being a loser. So those people kind of have a hard time to understand how people operate and why they don't consider what they consider being a winner to a win, and why they don't consider what they consider being a loser to a loss. Okay, think about a situation. Person is looking for a healthy, happy relationship, get caught up with a person that scams them, and they don't get what they want. Okay, that person looking for a healthy relationship might have a crisis, and then come off with being very authentic or growing from that or whatnot, and that would be seen as a loser. Um, okay, because they actually seek a healthy, happy connection, and they see the world through that frame. Um, and so the fact that they see the world through that frame makes of them a loser to people that haven't encountered healthy relationships before. And so they would blame the supposed loser for lack of discernment, rather than blaming themselves for lack of discernment, that that person completely seeks something in the world. And here is the big ouchie: it's not something that they don't want or don't look for. Okay, so but that would get them to face their entire upbringing, community, inspirations, working environment, monetary investments, careers, from the 0 point, from Genesis and the regenesis, um, to completely change the whole trajectory. And a lot of people that run into me to varying degree meet that point in their lives, which compounds to a trail of frustrated, obsessed people, that some of them have prolonged trajectory of growth, and for some, they are so invested in the things that keep the support from reaching them, that, and it's not always their fault. It's not about fault. It's about something that needs a point of interference to be changed. But this is the why people can get so obsessed or so caught up in their act, or caught red-handed, or exposed, or they would look for support for their own worldview, and they would go to the circles that they would get that support, or alternatively they would be very lucky and would be met with things that they didn't expect to meet, and they could consequently feel that they're not supported. And so they have to go within themselves to say, okay, what is the thing that they have to bring to the table? Because very likely they do. And at the same time integrate this completely alien amongst them, that they don't know how to integrate into their psyche, because indeed Moon Square Aries people or Aries heavy people have a life trajectory that is very, very challenging for them, but also for the environment. Okay, it simply means that the environment and society as it is, and also the scientific information as it is, was not suffice. And their being naturally demotes, and this is a part of Aries, things that they held very, very dear and even taboo to talk about. Let's say the brotherhoods, the fraternities, the bonds between men, the ideation of gay relations, the thought that they are free. They are indeed born free, but they believe that they are masters and others are slaves. Okay? The fact that all of this is done as a wealth ritual that is basically creating a wealth block within the masonry. Okay? So this is entire society that needs to reconsider its fundamentals, and the I am is almost like a walking talisman of those square relations. And not only is it about sexuality, but it's also about social science and about science. Some would think that I am the Nephilim when I'm just a person that has a Moon Square Aries. I've even read a comment that said only a clone could interpret the Pope after I did an astrological reading for Habemos Papam Pope Leo. And it was only a matter of time where people would suspect me to be a clone. I'm not offended by that. And I understand why, because the old perceptions, even of blame the Bolshevists and the Jews and the this, are not suffice, because those things are based on indigenous practices. As well, that's how they trained the two spirits, which is the shamans, and then they wanted to create a genesis of a race that is of like the two spirits that are going to be controlling the world and predatory towards the world, all kinds of experiments, the super people, whatnot. And that is in essence a race of slaves that are grown into slavery traditions, but the indoctrination that they are free, because they can get away with doing crimes. But if you think about a person that had an overall, let's say, happy upbringing, or did their inner child work or whatnot, and they ask them, what would you like to get away with? They would say, I don't know, traveling the world. Yes, yeah, like it would be something along the lines of living the good life, definitely not along the line of raping, torturing, massacring, demociding many people, getting away with murder. It's like these are usually not the thoughts of a person that has not been insanely deprived of their sovereignty when they think about what can I get away with. So so that is again where people like me pose a very big challenge, where everywhere I go, people are faced with the fundamental essence of their life trajectory, even if they themselves are very intense. Then imagine a relationship, okay? So, yeah, this is, That's exactly the thing. When people have outer planets or a series of outer planets, inner planets, hard aspects, that can be very challenging relationally because they came to do something incredibly big in the world. And when people have that with Aries, aside of other things, is just very like you put these people into a box and they will and the box begins to disintegrate. Okay. And that is exactly kind of what erodes people's sense of selves that they have built according to those outdated societal structures. But with the hard aspects of Moon and Aries, it's also challenging to a person's own sense of self-nourishment, emotional security, because the more they do the moon work, the more they become that manifestation of those moon aspects, particularly the Aries ones. And that can be very challenging for a person to accept about themselves. Think about the notion that when Einstein discovered the theories of relativity, he was finding it difficult to accept his own discovery. And so if he found it difficult to accept his own discovery, then that was what made his theory stand the test of time, because he offered an experiment that would expose that. And one of the things that I do is say, well, take away the C factor, okay? Take away the C factor. For example, let's say psychiatry. Let's say somebody's getting a medication. The medication causes side effect. So I would simply say, okay, let's take away the C factor of the medication, especially if they are hospitalized. Have them without that and see how it works. This is what we would do in science. And then I get a response from psychiatrists. They say, but I cannot keep them in hospital without them taking medication. To which I say, so we found out what the problem is, and that's not the drug. It is the fact that if the person cannot get the supportive structure without the drug, it means that there is a C factor of corruption that we need to take away, because the medical experiment that is completely ethical, where the person says, hey, that pill is giving me bad side effect. I saw chemists that split a Seroquel pill that they knew that they are not supposed to split. And the response of the psychiatrist was like, hey, you're such a high-functioning person, just get on the pill again. When I asked the chemist why, they say, I can't with the side effect. And so when people talk about it, say, oh, the side effect is not from the pill, let's take away the medication and see if the side effect persists after the half-lifetime of the medication is done and the medication is completely out of the blood system. If we don't have the hospitalization conditions to do so, we basically never had an ethical medical experiment to approve this drug to begin with. And then, of course, an entire psychiatric field is under collapse. Okay, this is how, what Einstein did with his own theories, like, let's take away the C factor, and this is how I would design an experiment for that. With technology, it became possible. Then the Aries moon person find it challenging to accept their own understanding and say, okay, let's take away the possible C factors, and this is how those people eventually get their theories approved. Okay, it's the fact that they themselves doubt it that caused them to test it scientifically and get that approved. So this is why Aries moon is a manifesting aspect that will manifest a scientific social revolution, okay, because it contains the friction within the person themselves, that they have this huge epiphany, but they're questioning it themselves, and so they hold the societal tension around the topic within themselves. And can it be that the person I went to curate sexual boundary violation in childhood is involved with some secret societies, that he needed to get a certification to do what he does, and he actually never had an orgasm, only trauma-based stuff that are always imbued with treason and abuse and a mind control and trying to make others active, to run others? Can it be? Oh my God, let's try to test how am I without this person's influence on my energy. Oh my, they constantly try to mind control me. Oh my, they're going through intense things with themselves around. Oh my, they get obsessed about me. Who would believe me? I'm the patient. Oh my, they threaten my life. Oh my, it's several years after and they're still trying to get into that energy. Oh, they have a personality that wants to fix things and a personality that wants to this. Oh, where is that deal coming from? Oh, very likely they were also in that MK Ultra thing and they were targeted. And oh my, there are many oh my's, because they also choose which children are taken from the parents and not. And oh my God, I think that this is onto something that is way bigger. So that sends them on a trajectory of trying to heal, all while being subjected to all these things that and so this is how the holding of that tension, because if you are completely certain that something is true, you're certain, and with time people come to your certainty, okay, or people come to realize that this is a thing. But if you are uncertain that something is true, and you're not like, well, I'm uncertain, I just do it, and then it's like, oh my gosh, it works, oh God, this works. But if you're like, wait a second, my hypothesis here, or what I sense here, is completely different to anything that anybody has any clue about. Of the people that need to have the most clue about, and I'm not even certified in that. Okay, that probably, I don't know, but let's begin to test the factors here. What could it be? What am I, and the person asks, what am I wrong about? Was I not counting the data right? Was there something missing? Was there this? Was there that? And they begin to go one by one upon the trajectories, and they're like, oh, most society is conceived of varying degrees of between rape to people pleasing trajectories, and this is why it's so susceptible to social engineering around fertility, mind control, and medical practices that are not at all. This is how we would get a consensus around prescribing estrogen to endos that produce estrogen themselves. Okay? Yes, like, am I wrong about something? Oh, but actually when they go to Europe, where people actually do FDA approved, like they don't do the FDA on, like, Moderna and Pfizer, and the rest of the Prozac products, SSRIs, and the rest of your financial crisis in 2008, People would get something for depression that would heighten the threshold, and they would get extra libidinal stuff and extra purchasing stuff, and then they would get into debt, and then they would get acknowledged as cuckoo, because before that nobody cares about their depression. They're like, take a pill, and they have to pay for that, even though the depression is because they lost their housing and mortgages and whatnot. So in Europe, they actually don't recommend the pill. They recommend only one pill that happens to not have estrogen in it. I don't know if that pill is any good, but at least it's less harm. Then why not put even more estrogen into the endo growth? Okay, so that is yes, and that is from my certification as aromatherapist. And like, I just look at what is creating the issue, and I'm like, oh well, there's something that grows and it produces estrogen that helps it to grow, and they medicate that with estrogen. Because we were taught not to give oils that induce estrogen to people with endo, or estrogen related or estrogen excess related diseases. So yeah, that is how the moon Aries operates. In harmonious aspects, it's easier to facilitate the confidence. In disharmonious aspects, we have a manifesting aspect, which means this person manifests a scientific social revolution. Okay, Einstein's revolution was not just about the science that he did. This person initiated the Manhattan Project. Okay, initiated the Manhattan. I repeat that. He made the call. He picked up the phone and said, well, the Germans are doing that. We better be doing that as well, and faster than them, because they're doing that. Now, the fact that the Germans were working together with the United States and all of them were kind of like, is something that we're not told. But at least within that venue, definitely Einstein has initiated also a social revolution, not just a scientific one. So, big video, big data, personal blog. As you can see, this hour and whatever boxes that they may try to put a person or a broadcaster, an astrologer, or a woman or a two-spirit or whatnot, there's just like the box, there's just no box, it doesn't work. Okay, so that just does not work with the current anything. And yet this is why people find it very difficult to deal with me, because they understand that what I bring to the table they will sooner or later have to deal with. However unpleasant, however challenging, it's just not something that they can ignore. Whether it's an astrological prediction, or it's something that I say, and people that got to know me a little, or my effect on their lives, they're kind of like, hey, that person just said something, we need to take that into account. Okay, and so this puts people in a situation where they have to confront me. They can't really go away or swipe that under the rug, and they don't yet they're not yet equipped to deal with me, which is very humane and very understandable. It can also be beyond frustrating, beyond terrifying, and beyond any changes that they've been through in their life, because again, this is not Pluto, this is not Neptune, it's not even Uranus, it's all of the above, and Aries. So yeah, that is my humble blog, and I hope that this sheds some light on those experiences that people have been having with me, and don't know how to deal with. Yeah, and this is where the best advice that I would have to someone is to understand that I bring something that they would need to deal with by accommodating for what I bring to the world. And that's the trajectory that's going to get them the least amount of struggle, and that accommodation has to be not in according to what they think is true and fit, but according to what I would experience as true and fit. And as a result of that, um, they are very likely to have better lives as well. And yet I do not they should not neither of us should illude ourselves that this is in any way easy to go through. Okay, when I met with a person that had Lilith conjuncting my Aries Lilith conjuncting my Lilith, um, this was definitely something that I had to I had to learn to accommodate for. Hey, this is where that person is coming from. This is how sexual sovereignty is challenged in their case, which sheds a lot of light to my own struggles around sexual sovereignty. And this is how it pertains to those life areas for them and those life areas for me. So this is yes, so that is the things that I went through with that um, were beyond intense. Okay, I'm not disclosing everything, but it went all the way to my childhood and infanthood, and maybe even I'm not saying conception, but definitely my ancestral lineage, things that I didn't think about, um, and suddenly began to show themselves, yes, in my life trajectory, but also the fact that I also bring a moon square Lilith, then they are not exempt from my own Aries moon square. Sorry, moon square. No, yeah, for some it's moon square Lilith, yes, which is also very challenging. But moon square Aries from my own chart, so I bring it to every person's chart in a synastry, and then they are not exempt from dealing with me either. No matter what they try, and they tried. Because it's kind of like whatever happens with me, they'll still have to deal with that. And that's the point about the moon Aries people. Okay, Einstein is no longer alive. For how long? People still have to deal with the aftermath. um, so yeah, uh, we are nearing the we are in 1 hour. Um, More things to say about the topic. I think I've pretty much covered all of the issues that people may have, and the fact that it is what it is. I'm also dealing with that because being in situations where, let's say, I needed the help of society, and I was putting, the- you know, I had even a conversation with a lady that helped me when I was in need, and she was having a hard time with me, and she was like, "Well," mentioning the fact that I bring into light everything that is wrong in society. And so it's very difficult to accommodate for a person like that, because when you face a person like that, you cannot even breathe next to them without facing everything that is wrong with society. On all levels of existence. And so it's very challenging for both the Aries person, and um, the person on the other side, or the society at large, facing each and every Aries person. Naturally, I'm not the only one, and different people pose different challenges as well. And even the various Aries heavy people are also posing challenges to one another, because the way it manifests in each one is different. Um, and yet, that understanding that that's not something they can just swipe under the rug, and when they do, it meets them in another point of view that they can't swipe under the rug. Okay, that's just okay. But, astral energy is saying, I can attest. I can attest. I've been through that. I've tried that. That went not so good. Um, so this is yet another life trajectory. Aries people will Aries. They bring that social change. They challenge preconceived notions of the everythingness that there is, and and the world will have to adapt. That's just so. Yes, more than that, I think we've pretty much covered a lot of that. Um, and again, people that are stuck in their ways next to the Aries person, of trying to make the Aries person be someone that they're not, those are the ones that really set themselves up in a way that's just not it's just not good. Okay, but this is something that both them and the Aries person will need to deal with, because people that are stuck in their ways, and they're like, you ran into an Aries person, you ran into a person that doesn't fit in those boxes, you still try to make them fit in those boxes, they don't fit in those boxes. um, you try to put force on this topic, they come up with a reaction that stirs up even deeper anxieties in you. Okay, then I can't make it more. I just, all I can think about is think about bringing people with Moon Aries more harmonious aspects into your life. Um, and even with that, the challenging aspects of the natal chart, they're still there. So yes, right now Aries conjuncts my Mercury, some people's moon, at least two, at least two world leaders. that I tended to when I tended to political assassination prevention. The moon is 22ing. Um, yeah, and Chiron. um, yeah, so those are conjunction is a manifesting aspect, is a challenging aspect that asks all of us to see things differently. Those who haven't been in the satirical situation where somebody is delivering a message through the people that are the survivors of their alleged abuse has not seen communication. Has not seen communication um, ever in their life. So so people do come across quite creative ways to communicate. Um, and naturally, social engineers can only be relied on in the cult of treason so much, which is causing further chaos, of course. So so yes, Eris conjuncting um, those that for whom Eris is conjuncting the moon, they are going to bring some tremendous social revolutions and scientific revolutions to the table. It's Einstein by transit. Okay, it's basically being an Einstein by transit because of the conjunction, and it's gonna stay for a couple of years, even a decade, at least a decade. Um, and so, yeah, for most of them, the conjunction is past the degree, um, but for me, it kind of isn't quite with the Mercury. Um, so I guess this is why you get this Aries. It's kind of like Pluto is about taboos. Aries is on another level. So, um, if Pluto is challenging to discuss, and Aries is beyond challenging to discuss, again, if I think about scientific revolutions, would be the easiest way to explain what those aspects are. And for those of you that have the conjunction, that have moon in the last degrees of Aries, it would be interesting to see what these people bring to the table, what they have, what scientific discoveries they make. For some people, that would be me. um, and those are the agents of chaos right now. There are agents of chaos in the world. Um, so yeah, they bring about certain things that people find it incredibly challenging to deal with. Um, and they rise into positions that they're becoming more prominent. So as a person that tended to the security risks around that, and every chart has a place in your heart. So so that is something that kind of and then it's the same thing. It's like the person can have a place, the chart can have a place in the heart, and so on, and then the societal changes that need to be made also need to be made. So yes, those are interesting conversation. Yes, those are that have a laser precision to them when it comes to the changes that need to be made. All in all, fascinating. Anybody with placements in the last degrees of Aries, Libra, Capricorn, in Cancer, where the Sun is right now, those people are having interesting times. Oh yeah, Aries is squaring the ascendants of late Capricorns and Cancers. Like, I just think about people. Okay, let's talk about the fact Capricorn, Cancer. Okay, they have had Pluto going over their ascendant or opposing their ascendant for several years. They had the Mars Pluto opposition on their IM. They had they're having the Saturn. They had, and now they're having the Aries squares. Their ascendant is gonna take like a decade or so. I just and it doesn't mean that they don't have other placements that are challenging to deal with. So anybody that can light a candle and say a prayer for Capricorn and Cancer ascendants of the last degrees of Capricorn and Cancer, and Aries and Libra ascendants of those last degrees, yes, that would be humanitarian aid to the world. More than I understand. Okay, then I'll do that. So yeah, this is my elongated personal vlog, podcast, audio listening, something, and some astrology, the usual. Those that get into the mix where people are like, there's going to be a Catholic revolution, and everybody places a sign that there's something with Catholicism, and you just go and do you. And I'm like, I love Jesus. By the way, the satanic ritual abuse underneath the Vatican. But Medici has discussed the use of sedatives of libidinal energy to recover in pedophiles if they want to recover. So, not that it has anything to do with anything. Anyway, I love Jesus. Did I say I love Jesus already? So, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm an astrologer. Oh, you must work with the saints and help Christ consciousness. And I'm like, yeah, I like Jesus. Then how does the the astrology is like? Yeah, I'm an astrologer. Like, oh, Galileo. Yeah, he was funded by the Medicis. I don't know why the Pope had a problem with them. So Medicis, and although it does move. And yeah, and that is I guess, but that is already Uranus, or is it also Moon Aries? I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's also Moon Aries. It's not particularly religious, although it might be. I wonder what is the natal chart of all the saints. I think about it, the people that reformed Catholicism. And most of the really Catholic people that we know are actually people that were close to heretics, and they very likely had some impressive. Think about the times where Aries was in Pisces. But then I don't know when was Aries in, like, the time of the apostles, which is like 2,000 years ago, or less, or yeah, I mean, Jesus is the beginning of the century, so 25 years ago. um, yeah, but we don't have the actual natal chart of Jesus Christ. um, yeah, or some of it, maybe we do edit, I don't know. um, how would we even calculate that? That would be the because he was born before. Then if some say he was 33, because he had to have been 33. I mean, otherwise he couldn't be a Mason. um and yes, and all things Dante. So yes, I will release this now and cross myself to sleep.